Morning and welcome to Gardening 365 46. Now I was asked a question on our Facebook page by Paula Thomas, and the question, which was a good one but unfortunately it's not a straightforward answer, is when can I plant seeds? Now my first recommendation is when you buy seeds, on the back of the packet you've always got instructions of when to plant. So on this case it's between March and May, and these are cherry tomatoes, and that might be back to front but I'm sure you can read it. Now a lot of gardeners are very competitive and they always like to show off, I've got the first of. And when people see posts from those sort of people, they think it's immediately time for them to plant seeds and stuff as well. Wrong. Now those so-called people are doing that will have some form of heating or some sort of protection. And then those experts that use this sort of thing will be paying big costs. A heater like that, a gas heater for a greenhouse, will possibly cost you £100 plus. A bottle like that will cost you £75 to £80 to refill. And a bottle like that in a greenhouse as big as this, on full bore, will only last a few nights. So what I do is, I do use heating, and I do use this gas heater, but I have it on the lowest setting for frost protection. So I can start some plants a little bit earlier. But I've just said the worst word of all, frosts. Another common mistake, because it's in a greenhouse, the frost won't damage it. Trust me, I've seen this greenhouse this year, and it will go to minus temperatures with no heating. So things like tomatoes will be killed by it. So your biggest enemy is frost. So my simple piece of advice is follow the advice on the backs of the packets. That's the first one. Okay, there is another one. Being more modern, we've got things like mobile phones, internet and apps. And I downloaded an app called Sowing Calendar, and it's absolutely perfect for what you want to do with this, Paula. So what you need to do is download Sowing Calendar on your apps, and it shows you when to plant your plants, which is great, but it also shows you when they're ready to pick and how long the growing period is. So if you grow too early, you're going to go into the frost, and if you sow too late, you're going into the frosts. But a lot of it is just experience. Now, I've been gardening for about 40 years and I still don't consider myself an expert. I have disasters every single year. But what I try to do is something I call succession gardening. So I try to get some early plants growing, and then I try to get also some mids and some late plants. So the growing season then is as long as possible. So for example, with my tomatoes this year, they're possibly nearly a foot tall, the first ones. I'll be sowing some more tomatoes today, and I will also be sowing tomatoes maybe in a month or two's time to get some really late ones. Last year I had my last tomato on Boxing Day. I'm looking to extend that this year, and also I'm looking to have tomatoes ready even earlier this year than I've ever had them before, using a little bit of heat. Okay, but there's always risk with early and lates. Your mid-crop is always your most fruitful one of all. Potatoes, this is one of the things that people always make mistakes with. They try to grow them too early, especially those people who got them outside. A potato like that at the moment, even just touching freezing point, will be killed by the frost. So it'll just nip the tops, and the frost will go down into the potato and kill it. So certainly potatoes like this should not be outside at all yet. There are ways of protecting them, and I'll show you a simple one. A pot. I think most gardeners would have one of those, and those would now be protected from a very light frost. Obviously they're in the greenhouse, so this is only a mock-up if they were outside. If the frost was heavier, you'd need to put something on to sort of stop those holes. But anything like that will protect your potatoes. Okay, and I'm talking about potatoes. Guess what I'm doing next? Now, belt and braces. I'm just going to cover those tops up just for tonight. Does it really need it? Probably not, because these are going to be in a semi-heated greenhouse. But I don't want the frost getting any of my plants if I can help it. Covered two up now, and they're ready. As I say, belt and braces, they didn't really need that, but I've done it anyway. cover them up and the frost can't nip them. And that's a good chance now for me to water them, so I'm going to put some water on them. And these are the tulips that we put in a few weeks ago. Looking alright, but look far too dry, so I'm going to put some water on them now as well. My next job is to plant some more early potatoes. These are Charlotte, and they're known for being some of the earliest potatoes ever. I've already put 2 rows in, but there's no sign of any growth whatsoever yet, so it's all happening under the soil, and that means they're frost protected. As soon as they break the surface, then you have to do something to protect them. You could put fleece on, flower pots on, or even mould them up into the triangular shapes that potatoes are normally done. I'll go with that one, but initially I might put 1 or 2 pots on just until they all come through. Okay, these will probably catch these up, and these will probably catch these up, but what I'm trying to do is to divide my potato growth up over the next few weeks. Okay, and when I get to the end, that'll probably take me another month or 2 to get to there, because I'm putting them in every 2 weeks. We'll have potatoes hopefully then for quite a bit of the season. You all know how much I like the kale. These now are starting to go to seed, so this is pretty much done, this plant now. The bottom leaves are still edible, not the very bottoms ones, because those are the ones that the frost nipped. Now, saying about frost again, kale are more hardy than a lot of the plants, so you can grow these in the colder periods. Okay, so it's nipped the bottom leaves, but the plant is still grown. But as I say, this one now is very near to being ripped out, ready for the next kale to go in for the following year. The garlic, they're hardy, so they've got resistance to frost. So is the purple sprouting. Although the bottom leaves are nipped, the plants themselves live. And at the moment the purple sprouting is fantastic. So you see the little purple hearts? That's what you eat, plus a few of the leaves, and it is just gorgeous. And we've got plenty growing now as well. And believe it or not, strawberries are pretty hardy as well. So for such a delicate plant, they can survive the frosts. Potatoes now in, row 3, and cover them up. And I hope to see them in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Why in 2 or 3 weeks when they're not up now? Because as the season goes on, they start germinating a lot quicker. Okay, so that's the way it works. And an executive decision, the kale have come out. But you know what I'm going to say, nothing goes to waste in this house. Ducks have next chomp at the kale. Just had quite a bit, and they've just had enough now for a little bit, so I'm sure that'll be gone later today. And then when we're finished, the stalks will be composted, and they'll go to provide compost to grow next year's crop. And now the whole raised bed, which is raised bed 2, is free for growing this year's potato crops. And I've got some plans for this one as well. You'll see over the next couple of weeks what I'm planning. So next I'm going to grow some tomatoes. I've got some cherry tomatoes, a Garden Delight, which is Claire's favourite, and a really good cropping one, which is Elsa Craig, a really well-known tomato maker. Both really good varieties. Got the seeds from Unwins. I've not really used them before, but I couldn't get them from anywhere else quick enough, so I'm not going to plant all of these today. I'm just going to plant a small amount, and then maybe in a month's time I'll grow some more. So that's tomatoes. And what I've prepared is a tray of compost. This is bought compost, by the way. I'm just going to sort of just press it down very, very lightly before I put the seeds in. Now if you look what I've done, I've planted them in rows, if you like. And I've got 15 of the Gardener's Delight and 15 of the Elsa Craig. And I can now tell how good the germination is, because I should get 15 plants from each side that grow. And from that then I can work out how good Unwin seeds are against the other seed suppliers that I've had off. Bargain Seeds, which have been very good so far, and from DT Brown. So I know then which seeds are my preferred seeds for the following year. So I'm going to cover them up now. Okay, this compost is about a week or 2 old. I'm just going to show you what's happened in a week or 2's time. So I'm just going to turn it over. And if you look in, you can see this white. Okay, and that shows you that compost is already starting to work already. Look here in the grass, the white bits. Okay, and it's that's ultimately going to give it the heat before the worms come in. Okay, so a week or 2 old, and that's what happens. A little bit of dampness in it, but I am going to put a little bit more water on it just to keep it nice and moist. Okay. And again, another example of compost working. The worms are on the top, just doing their thing. And to get it working, some good grass. Just spread the grass over, which is a green. So usually green things are classed as green, and usually the brown things are classed as carbon, but there are some differences in that. So I'll spread that all across, and then you'll see what I'm going to do next. So there we are now. 2 bins full of grass. Well, not just full of grass, a layer of grass on the top. And now on top of that, I'm going to put some wood chip, which supplies the carbons. Okay, and I've got about 5 tonne of wood chip. And many more tons of grass to come. And on top of the grass, tip the wood chip and spread it out to make a layer that completely covers your grass up. Also, we could put kitchen waste in here, any trimmings from your veg, and also any animal manure. Now this is where it gets a bit tricky with animal manure. Animals that don't eat meat, you can make compost and put it onto your vegetables. Animals that eat meat, for example pets like cats and dogs, that can make compost, but you shouldn't apply it to your food products, your vegetables. But it's fine for plants, flowers. But obviously I wouldn't apply that in the house. It shouldn't smell, but I just don't like the sound of that. Okay, all of this is for vegetables. Now, composts rely on having moisture in them. So what I do every now and then, especially when it's dry, is just put a couple of cans of water on them just to give them that dampness. And what you'll notice a day or two after, real heat gets into the compost heap, which is exactly what you're looking for. So I'm just going to give a can of water. I use water out the duck pond. You can use whatever water you want really. Sprinkle it around. Now underneath this we've got lots of grass, lots of older compost and wood chip, garden waste, kitchen waste, and some shavings and duck poo from the duck house. Maybe in about, I don't know, a couple of weeks time, maybe a month, I'll turn this over. I do want some compost worms for another project that I'm doing, which I'll get some out at that stage. But also turning compost really aerates it, makes it much better. A little bit of tips for compost. Done. And when you've watered it, I've put a couple of cans on this. I'm going to cover it up with some old carpet. So I'll put some carpet on the top and just a big half breeze block just to keep everything in place when the wind comes. Okay, and I do that every week or two, as I say. Perfect. And this is my gardening buddy. This is a Houdini. And she's by far the friendliest of all the ducks we've got. Because she loves worms. And she loves eating them out my hand. So she'll stay with me all of the time I'm doing my soil preparation. Isn't she lovely? Fantastic looking bird. And very, very friendly. The other thing to bear in mind when seed planting is the coming week's weather. At the moment the weather's really nice. Cold at night, but it's going to drop cold during the day as well, so the weather's completely changing. Now, I'm going to plant in here now. I'm confident the soil is quite warm after at least a week of warm weather now. And then what I'm going to do to protect those seedlings, and when they're under the soil they shouldn't need any protection, but as soon as they pop through, just got these hoops and I'm going to put some bubble wrap over the top of them just to protect them that little bit. So that's another thing to bear in mind when planting seeds, is the coming weather. And another thing to gain some knowledge of when to plant your seeds is to watch some programs on television or on YouTube, and I would recommend following the people who do week by week gardening. For example, our #1 most popular gardening presenter, Monty Don. Hello. Or even our 3rd most popular presenter who presents on YouTube and Facebook, myself. So you can follow me week by week, and if I'm planting something in colder conditions probably the most, it certainly should be safe to you. Remember, we might have to protect our stuff as well though, so just bear that in mind. Certainly get watching these programs. Monty Don, hello, myself. You could even watch our #2, but he doesn't do week by week gardening, so it can get confusing. That's Alan Titchmarsh, by the way. I'm planting in my raised beds. You've probably seen this before. All I do with my hand, because the soil's very light, is measure a seed drill by hand. Simple. Here's another example of successional gardening. Basically, put some peas in, put some beans in. The peas grow up the beans for stability. Still will have to put some sticks in there, but basically my peas are in there, but I'm about to sow some more. And whenever I put anything out in the garden, especially when it's dry, the very next thing I do is just give everything a really good watering. And what that does is just help the roots get established. I'll give them at least a can, I might even get a second can. Make sure everything got plenty of water. In fact, what I'll probably do is give them a second can of water tonight. What about those peas? There's my tray that I used for the last time for the peas. I'll use the same tray. I'll even use the same tag. So I'm going to put those peas in. That's it, 1 pea in each. I haven't soaked them. I don't usually bother. And these peas are seeds that was given to us last year by a neighbour, Kathy. We kept some seeds out the pods, dried them, and these are the seeds now that we're sowing this year. So thank you, Kathy, and hopefully we have some lovely peas again this year. All covered up and now ready for a good watering. And again, give it a good soak. Now I'm going to put the peas in the greenhouse. The reality is they're quite hardy and they could have gone straight outside, but I've just put some in trays. Doesn't really matter either way. I'm putting in spinach seeds, which the good thing is they're reasonable sized seeds, so you can spread them out well. I put them about an inch and a half away from each other. Now I just cover everything up. Well, in this case the spinach, using my garden tools, which in virtually every case now, just using my hands. Okay, the light soil, I don't need any sort of garden tools. Do it, and it really is as easy as that. And later on tonight, they'll get a really good soak in as well, just before I put the polythene on. And next to go in is Swiss chard, and this is rainbow. First time of growing Swiss chard for me. Claire's grown it before, and you'll notice now this is bargain seeds, far less in a packet, but what I've seen so far, a really good germination rate, and they are reasonable size seeds, so they should be quite easy to handle. And finally I've put some lettuce in. So I've got lettuce, chard and spinach, and at the end I've got spring onions. Going to give them really good watering now, and then I'm going to put them to bed. And there we have it, anchored down now for the cold snap. As soon as the weather warms up, that'll all come off. So just to protect them a little bit. As I say, the spring onions should be frost hardy. I'm not sure about the others as they come through, but we'll see. At the end of the year, last year, I took some cuttings of some red currants and some black currants, and I'm pleased to say that every single one, apart from one, has actually caught. So I have now got some red currants and some black currants free to a good home. Yes, Claire, I've promised you two, you will have two, so don't worry about that. But anybody else that wants any red or black currants, I've got some for each good home. And welcome to your new home. I hope you really enjoy it. And just to summarise Paula Thomas's question, when is it okay to plant seeds? I would say literally all of the things that I've said. So look at the back of the pack of the seeds, get that app that I said, which is really, really useful. Watch some of the gardening programs. Gardener's World is ideal. Gardening 365 is ideal. And just basically take all of that all together, especially watching out for the weather as well, all of that, and start to make your own decisions. You're going to have 1 or 2 successes, which will be great. You'll have 1 or 2 disasters, which will be awful. But over there all, then you'll start to learn your own techniques. It's only then, that you really, really do garden really well, to be quite honest. But I would say read the back of the pack of the seeds before you plant anything. That's the key one. And the project over the next few days is to clear this little area, put some blocks in to support my IBC. But as usual, my buddies are here, and even Houdini's here, because she knows there's worms. And not bad for a day's work. Got a little bit more work to do, and I've lifted up now so I can get the watering can underneath. Do that hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday. And then I've got to put some wood around the bottom just to clad it. And then the cover goes on, and I connect it up to the gutter. And there will be my rain catcher. And that concludes this episode of Gardening 365 46. Join us next time for Gardening 365 47. Keep inviting your friends to Facebook. We're nearing that 1000. Keep watching those videos on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our Facebook channel, also called Gardening 365. Bye.